Today, we're looking into, well, a really compelling and sometimes pretty intense debate.
Yeah, we're unpacking a recent exchange between two quite prominent figures from Costa Rica.
That's right, Rigoberto Hidalgo and Vina Rush. And they really went head-to-head on some deeply personal and complex societal issues.
Their arguments give us a fascinating window into how personal beliefs, really shape public conversations.
Our main source here is the actual transcript from their live debate. It was titled, Debate Fuerte Cristiano versus Trans. Quite the title.
It is. But, just the transcript isn't quite enough to really get it. We've also looked into their individual profiles, their backgrounds, their life stories. They're not just details.
No, they're absolutely key to understanding why they argue the way they do, where they're coming from.
Exactly.
So our goal today, just to be clear, isn't about picking a winner or saying who's right. We're not endorsing any viewpoint here.
Not at all. We want to be your guide through their arguments, help you understand what they actually believe.
And explore the maybe surprising connections or even the really sharp contradictions that pop up when personal stories meet these big topics like abortion, gender identity, inclusive language.
Yeah, we want to help you grasp the specific points they each made and how they tried to, build their cases.
Okay, so let's dive in. Let's start with Rigoberto Hidalgo. You might know him online as @MiamiGoristotelis.
Right, he's an international Christian speaker, a writer, an apologist, and a philosopher from Costa Rica. Got his degree from Universidad Autónoma de Centroamérica.
And his personal story is pretty central, isn't it? He wasn't always a believer.
No, far from it, apparently. He actually talks about a time he was an atheist. Then he went on this deep personal search, which led him to Christian faith.
And now he defends that faith using, not just faith arguments, but logic, philosophy, even science.
Exactly. It's a very systematic approach, almost like he's using intellectual tools, maybe ones he even honed as an atheist, to now defend his belief. That's quite rigorous.
And he's definitely built a significant platform doing this. He directs Reasonable Faith, which is a pretty major ministry for faith defense globally.
And also Defensa Urbana. That's a youth movement he leads. Apparently, it's reached over 350,000 young people.
Wow, that's huge. Guiding them in critical thinking about God's existence. He's really equipping a generation with his particular style of argumentation.
He is. And he put a lot of that into his first book in May 2025, El Circo del Ateísmo, Volume 1.
The Atheism Circus.
Yep. And apparently it sold out its initial print runs in less than a month. It's seen as like a key handbook for young Christians facing challenges in universities or online.
His voice has certainly been heard in big forums, too. He was in that famous Debate del Siglo, debate of the century, against Dr. Guerrero Heredia, broadcast to thousands.
Yeah, that kind of high-profile debate would definitely sharpen his style and get his message out there.
He's even received official recognition, hasn't he? Like the key to a city.
That's right, the key to Santo Domingo Este in the Dominican Republic, specifically for his impact on youth, ethics, and critical thinking from a faith perspective.
So he's really an international figure now. Congresses, tours, Latin America, the U.S., Europe.
Absolutely. He gets around.
Okay, so that gives us a good sense of Rigoberto's foundation, philosophical, theological, very structured. But this debate had two sides. We need to understand Vina Rush. Her perspective is, completely different.
Utterly distinct, yeah. Vina Rush is a sociologist, studied at San Francisco University of California, and she's a really passionate advocate for LGBTQ+ rights.
And she also has this long career completely outside academia or activism?
Right. For 30 years, she's been a flight attendant for American Airlines. So you've got this mix. Academic training, social advocacy, and decades of, real-world interaction. It's a powerful blend.
Her activism has definitely made waves. 3 GLAAD Awards back in 2016. That's significant recognition.
It is. But what really pushed her into the wider public eye was winning that legal case against the Miss Universe Costa Rica organization.
Ah, yes. They'd initially stopped her from competing in the 2024 pageant because she's transgender.
Exactly. And while the full legal ruling is still being finalized, that victory was seen as a huge step for transgender women's rights in Costa Rica.
What was her motivation for wanting to compete in Miss Universe?
Well, what's really interesting is she says it wasn't just personal ambition. It was actually sparked by a conversation with a former Miss Universe, Shayna's Palacios.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Palacios apparently encouraged her, said, you have all the potential. But for Vina, her stated goal is broader, to open the way for other trans individuals in these kinds of pageants. She saw just participating as a win.
That makes it more about breaking down barriers.
Precisely. An act of advocacy in itself.
And her personal journey sounds quite powerful, too. It seems to inform her advocacy deeply.
Absolutely. She talks about a challenging childhood, mentioning a machista father, then emigrating to the U.S. with her mother at age 11.
And taking on the role of man of the house, as she put it.
Right. Which, she reflects, actually kind of delayed her own self-discovery because she was so focused on working, supporting family back in Costa Rica.
Those early experiences with gender roles must have had a profound impact.
You'd have to think so. Later, while working as a flight attendant, she found joy in artistic expression, interpreting iconic female figures like Celia Cruz. That seems like an important outlet.
And then at 33, she began her gender transition.
Yes, and importantly, she emphasizes she did this with professional support, working with a therapist. It wasn't impulsive, but a guided process of self-realization.
She's been very open about the physical aspects, too, over 30 surgeries.
Breasts, glutes, even voice modification surgery, which meant she couldn't speak for a month.
Wow.
She calls them surgical processes that led me to this beautiful transition achieved with education, patience, and discipline. It underscores the commitment involved.
And today, she's achieved quite a bit of visibility, collaborating with brands, walking red carpets.
Working with artists like Gloria Estefan, yeah. She describes her life now as full and happy, feeling nothing is missing.
And she made that striking statement, I fell in love with myself, and now I don't care about anything or anyone.
Right. That really speaks to a journey of profound self-acceptance. And you can see how that sense of self-actualization might fuel her arguments for individual autonomy in the debate.
Okay, so we have these two powerful figures shaped by very different lives. Now let's talk about the debate itself. Debate Fuerte Cristiano versus Transo, moderated by Randy Allen, streamed on Rigoberto's channel.
Yep, the Defensa Urbana. And the core topics were, well, pretty much guaranteed to be controversial. Abortion, gender ideology, and inclusive language.
3 hot buttons right there. How was it structured?
It was quite formal, actually, which helps us analyze it. 10-minute opening statements each.
Okay.
Then 5-minute rebuttals, 3-minute counter-rebuttals, an open Q&A, and finally 5-minute closing statements.
And the moderator, Randy Allen, tried to set a tone.
Yeah, he emphasized mutual respect and said the goal was for the audience to draw their own conclusions, not necessarily for one side to win.
That's important. And there was that moment right at the start about pronouns.
Crucial moment. The moderator explicitly asked Vinna how she wished to be addressed. She requested to be treated as a woman.
And Rigoberto agreed.
He did, for the duration of the debate. He framed it as an exception he was willing to make in that context. He also publicly committed to focusing on ideas, not personal attacks.
Which, considering the topic, probably set a surprisingly respectful initial tone, even if the ideas were going to clash hard.
Definitely set the stage for a debate on substance, at least initially.
Okay, let's dig into Rigoberto Hidalgo's arguments. He really started by laying down a foundation, didn't he? An epistemological system, he called it. Basically, how we know what's true.
Exactly. He's building his whole case on the idea of an objective reality, something we can access through our senses, through reason. And he stressed the principle of non-contradiction. Something can't be true and not true at the same time, in the same way.
So a very classical philosophical starting point.
Very. And he argued reality includes both physical and metaphysical stuff. He brought up Roger Penrose's idea of 3 worlds, mathematical, material, and mental. He was pushing back against purely materialistic views right from the start.
Setting up his own grand narrative. Then he defined person. How did he do that?
He used a very specific philosophical definition, an individual substance of rational nature. He added ideas like truths of act and potency, moral discernment, ontological personification.
Okay, act and potency. What does that mean in simple terms?
Basically, it's the difference between what something is right now, its act, and what it has the built-in potential to become, its potency. So for him, a zygote is human, act, and has the potential potency to develop fully. That potential grants it dignity and personhood from the very start, in his view.
And he called humans the 4th degree of being?
Yeah, a kind of hierarchy. Things that just are, things that live, things that feel, and then humans who also think and reason. It's a way to establish the unique moral status of human life.
Got it. So, applying this to abortion, he called it a deliberate and immoral act.
He did. He cited a specific biology text, El ser humano en desarrollo, saying human development starts at fertilization, creating a unique individual distinct from the mother.
And he brought in bioethics principles, too.
Yep. Autonomy, non-maleficence, do no harm, beneficence, do good, and justice. He applied these right back to conception, arguing that life is an absolute fact, not a right.
He really tried to build an intellectual fortress around this using different kinds of arguments, these shields he talked about.
Right, his blundages, 3 of them. First, ontological, based on Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas. Basically, any individual substance with a rational nature has dignity from conception. He even quoted a biologist, Antonio Cruz, on the zygote's genetic autonomy.
So, arguing from the inherent being of the embryo.
Exactly. The second shield was moral, using Kant.
Ah, Kant. Treat people as ends in themselves.
Precisely.
Yeah.
He argued the embryo qualifies as something that must be treated as an end in itself, a moral subject, deserving respect based on universal duty.
And the third shield, dialectical identitarian. Sounds Hegelian.
It is. He argued the individual develops through a kind of dialectic. The embryo embodies the potential of the human idea. So abortion isn't just biological, it's a negation of the human spirit, cutting short its development and freedom.
Wow, he's pulling from everywhere: ancient philosophy, Enlightenment ethics, German idealism.
He really is, trying to create this multi-layered defense. And he claimed all this aligns with a Christian worldview and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 3 on the right to life. His conclusion, abortion is murder.
Okay, so that's his case against abortion. But Vinna also used the Bible in her arguments for choice. How did Rigoberto handle that?
He tackled those directly. He said her examples, God striking firstborns in Exodus, the command to destroy Amalek in Samuel, were a category fallacy. Meaning they were specific, one-off divine judgments in a theocratic context, or maybe even hyperbolic ancient Near Eastern military language, not universal moral permissions for elective abortion today.
So context matters, he argued.
Immensely. He then pointed to Exodus 21, which he reads as protecting the unborn, and passages like Psalm 139 and Jeremiah 1.5 to argue Christianity has always been pro-life.
And he also pushed back on using Marx or Hegel to justify abortion.
Yeah, he said Marx was talking about economic oppression, not bioethics. And Hegel's idea of freedom wasn't about individual whim, but living in harmony with the ethical community. So, misapplications, in his view.
Okay, let's shift to gender ideology. Rigoberto laid out 5 truths about humanity: biological, metaphysical,
soul, spirit, matter, and form, with a purpose, a telos, and governed by logic.
Yeah, he's setting up a very structured, defined view of what it means to be human.
And from that, he argued for a strict biological binary.
Pretty much. He cited several scientific texts on molecular biology defining sex by gametes, genetics pointing to the Y chromosome, physiology looking at gonads, embryology.
All pointing to 2 sexes.
His conclusion from that evidence was stark. Only 2 sexes and the rest is invention. He rooted his argument very firmly in biology as he interprets it. But Vinna cited neuroscience studies suggesting trans brains align with gender identity.
He addressed that specifically. He referenced a 2016 meta-analysis claiming it found no consistent neuroanatomical proof for trans brains matching the opposite sex. He also criticized the small sample sizes in some of those studies, like just 6 people.
So questioning the scientific basis Vinna presented.
Exactly. His core point was, respecting dignity is vital, but you can't achieve equality by denying what he sees as biological facts. Perception doesn't change reality for him. He even used the syllogism about entities having an essence and purpose defined by reality.
A fixed blueprint again.
Seems so. And finally, inclusive language. He analyzed this from multiple linguistic angles, right?
Yeah, morphological, syntactic, semantic, pragmatic, normative, very technical.
His main point for Spanish was that the standard masculine form, like los alumnos for students, is already grammatically inclusive by default. So new forms aren't needed.
He argued these new forms confuse sex and identity.
Yes, semantically confusing. And pragmatically, they're inefficient. They violate the principle of economy of language, basically, making language clunky.
He called it absurd and unreal.
He did. Based on a syllogism that functional language needs coherence, and inclusive language breaks that coherence. He even brought in Heidegger.
Heidegger on language.
Yeah, the idea that language is the house of being. Rigoberto argued that distorting language actually hides being. Language is for communication, first and foremost, not social engineering, in his view.
Did he mention any research on its effects?
He cited Professor Ignacio Bosch's 2012 research, suggesting these inclusive forms don't actually improve perceptions of equality and can even cause confusion or rejection, harming communication.
So for Rigoberto, it's not just grammar, it's about clarity, reality, even philosophy.
A deep, multi-pronged rejection of it.
Okay, now let's completely switch perspectives. Vina Rush, her arguments come from a very different place. Personal freedom, lived experience, a sense of evolution. How did she approach abortion?
Well, she started by using the Bible too, but to argue the opposite point, that there's no absolute moral prohibition against it.
Using the same kinds of passages Rigoberto addressed.
Some of them, yeah. Exodus 12, God striking the firstborns. Samuel 15, the command to destroy Amalek, including infants. Deuteronomy 20, leave nothing that breathes.
Her interpretation being,
Her conclusion was, if God, in these specific judgments, allowed or commanded the death of unborn or young children, then life can't be an absolute inviolable value in all circumstances. Therefore, there could be moral justification for a woman to end a pregnancy.
turning the scripture back on itself in a way.
Exactly, using it to argue for moral flexibility, not absolute rules. Then she moved to more practical justifications.
Like what?
Rape, severe fetal malformations, situations where the mother's life is at risk, her lifestyle, chromosomal issues, congenital diseases, a whole range of real-world complexities.
Essential to her argument was the right to choose.
Absolutely central. She strongly asserted a woman's right to choose over her body and explicitly stated men have no right to decide for women in this matter.
She framed forced pregnancy as a form of oppression.
Yes, drawing on ideas you might associate with critical theory. She called it alienation and exploitation, linking it to patriarchal and capitalist systems.
Bringing in Marx and Hegel again, but from her perspective.
Right. She argued that structures of oppression need dismantling for individual liberation. Any imposition that takes away control over one's body is oppression, in her view.
So forcing a woman to carry an unwanted pregnancy
Limits her self-realization, cuts her freedom, making abortion for her potentially a necessary condition to preserve the freedom and self-realization of the female gender. It's framed as an act of liberation.
That's a radically different framing. Did she address the status of the fetus directly?
In her rebuttal, she first emphasized speaking from her reality, not just citing books. She reiterated abortion is a woman's right. And she asked provocatively, what happens if the Bible didn't exist? Implying some ideologies depend heavily on it.
But on the fetus itself.
When pushed on the body of the baby, she said it's the mother's decision, her conscience, and God's. She did acknowledge it as a distinct human life.
Oh, she did.
Yes, she confirmed a fertilized entity is life and a different human. But, and this is key, she said it's under the regime of the mother.
Under the regime of the mother. That's a striking phrase. What about calling it a crime?
She rejected that. It's not a crime. I am not who to judge her because she has to take her own conclusions. Again, emphasizing individual autonomy and conscience.
Okay, let's move to gender ideology. Vinna cited neuroscience.
She did. She claimed studies show transgender people's brains are more similar to their identified gender than their assigned sex at birth. Her takeaway. Gender is a question of brain identity.
Challenging the purely biological definition.
Directly. She asked, isn't it true that the brain is stronger than anything else in this humanity? Positioning the mind or brain as primary.
And she defined gender as
a social construct, independent of biological sex, and argued everyone should have the right to choose their gender identity.
Did she address biological variations beyond male-female?
Yes, she brought up intersex individuals, hermaphrodites, as evidence that a simple binary system, mujer y hombre, just isn't enough to capture the reality of human biology.
And denying someone's identity.
She called that a form of violence and discrimination. Everyone has the right to be recognized as they perceive themselves. It's about dignity for her.
She also mentioned the year 2025.
Yeah, emphasizing the evolution of the world exists, arguing against being stuck in prehistoric times, a call for embracing change and progress.
And she questioned God's gender.
Right. Does God's gender have to be masculine? Challenging traditional interpretations that might reinforce rigid gender norms.
Okay, finally, inclusive language. How did she argue for it?
She started from the premise that language doesn't just reflect reality, it actively constructs it. That's a common idea in modern linguistics and social theory.
So using the generic masculine?
Perpetuates an androcentric thought, she said, meaning it centers men and makes others invisible.
Androcentric, male-centered. Got it.
So she advocated for new forms, like the morphema E in Spanish.
As a tool. A tool for what?
To create a more egalitarian society, make all genders visible, and advance equality. Because for her, language creates reality.
She had that provocative question, too, about in the name of the Father.
Yeah, why always in the name of the Father? Why not in the name of the mother who created and gave birth? Really challenging patriarchal linguistic habits.
So she sees inclusive language as respect.
Respect for non-binary identities, yes. And as a necessary evolution, language adapting to a changing, more inclusive world, It's fundamentally about social justice for her.
Fascinating contrast. Let's zero in on some key exchanges, especially from the Q&A, these moments where they really locked horns.
Right. Rigoberto pushed Vinna on her point about God being potentially pro-abortion in some biblical contexts.
Yeah.
He asked, if she can choose over a life, why can't God?
How did she respond?
She clarified. She defends the right of biological women to choose, not choose death, but choose what happens with their own bodies.
And when he pressed about the baby's body?
That's when she repeated, it's the mother's decision, conscience, and God's. Acknowledging its life, a different human, but still under the regime of the mother.
And Vinna challenged Rigoberto too, didn't she? About difficult cases.
Yes, cases where a mother knows the fetus faces a life of suffering due to severe anomalies.
Rigoberto's response.
Very clear. Trauma is not cured with another violence. And from a crime, you don't make another crime. He argued the baby deserves life, the mother needs care, and if there was a perpetrator, like in rape, they need prison.
Don't punish the innocent fetus.
Exactly. And he emphasized the potential for superation overcoming challenges. Life has value regardless of the predicted difficulty.
Then there was that direct exchange on defining woman. That seemed pivotal.
It really was. Rigoberto asked Vinna, point blank, define a woman.
And she gave a biological definition.
She did. The biological female sex that has ovaries, reproduces, and is beautiful in many ways.
Rigoberto pounced on that, didn't he?
Immediately. He said something like, chromosome XXI. The ideology of gender just fell with this answer, implying her biological definition contradicted her broader stance on gender identity.
That must have been a tense moment. What about defining transgender woman?
When Rigoberto asked that, Vinna initially stumbled, saying something like, an ideology that does not correspond to reality, which sounds like Rigoberto's view.
Wait, really?
Yeah, but then the moderator prompted her to answer objectively, and she conceded, looking at herself perhaps, I am seeing a woman. It showed the complexity and perhaps internal tension in articulating these definitions under pressure.
Wow. Another key point was God's gender, or lack thereof.
Right. Vinna asked Rigoberto, if God doesn't have a biological sex, why should that not justify gender ideology? Why are humans locked into binaries if God isn't?
A fair question from her perspective. Rigoberto's answer.
He called it a false analogy. God is immaterial, spirit, not comparable to human biology.
So different categories altogether.
Exactly. But then Vinna took his points about God creating man and woman in his image and flipped it.
How so?
She concluded, well, if God created both male and female in his image, then God must encompass both, essentially making God trans and therefore perfect.
Huh. Using his own premise against him.
And Rigoberto's counter was that she just validated the Bible and the idea of divine design by even using that logic, a real philosophical chess match there.
Okay, let's talk about the closing statements. How did they wrap things up?
Vinna's closing was very personal, very rooted in her journey. She thanked everyone, acknowledged her identity might be apocalyptic for some people.
But it's a strong word.
It is. She recounted her path. Born Catholic, accepted Jesus, born male, now living as a woman. She framed her life as superation, that overcoming adversity again, and stressed her connection to God.
What was her main message?
That her mission wasn't to impose her views, but to show love, empathy, unity. And she proudly mentioned winning her legal rights as a trans woman in Costa Rica. It was a closing based on testimony and resilience.
And Rigoberto's closing?
He started by asserting Vinna hadn't refuted his core arguments. Then he shifted completely.
To what?
To a biblical parable, the Pharisee and the tax collector from Luke's Gospel, contrasting pride with humility and repentance.
And he had directed this at Vinna.
Very directly, he offered her 3 words, humble yourself, go home, and take up your cross.
Wow, that's intense.
Extremely. He spoke about grace being received, God wanting surrender, not perfection, repentance as a change of thought. He included himself as a sinner needing the cross.
What was his final point?
He prayed for her family, her history, but challenged her to accept your design, arguing that identity is received, not created, ultimately coming from God. A very direct evangelical appeal.
And they exchanged gifts at the end.
Sort of symbolic, yeah. Rigoberto gave Vinna a book, Tools for Christian Defense, against things like progressivism and atheism.
And Vinna
Promised to give him her book once it's edited, and hinted they might debate again someday.
Quite an ending. So as we wrap up our own deep dive here, wow, we've really journeyed through a complex and intense debate.
Absolutely. We've looked at the deep personal beliefs and the, intricate arguments Rigoberto Hidalgo and Vina Rush brought to the table on these really charged issues.
You've heard their reasoning, from abstract philosophy and theology right down to raw personal experience and calls for social change.
And you've seen, hopefully, how their own life stories really do seem to shape their worldviews and how they approach these topics entirely.
So now, we turn it over to you, our listener. It's your turn to reflect. Think about the very different ways Rigoberto and Vinna define fundamental concepts like reality, personhood, freedom.
Yeah, how do their deeply held beliefs, whether they come from faith, from science as they interpret it, or from their lived experiences, how do those beliefs feed into the arguments they make?
What really stands out to you when you compare these two passionate yet radically different ways of seeing the world?
And maybe think about this as you reflect. Both Rigoberto and Vinna, in their own ways, are grappling intensely with the idea of identity.
That's a great point. Rigoberto talks about identity as something received, maybe divinely designed, inherent.
While Vinna passionately argues for an identity that is chosen, fought for, achieved through personal transformation and social struggle, something constructed.
So the provocative thought for you is, in a world full of evolving ideas and deeply held convictions, what does it mean for you to define or maybe discover your own identity?